I wanted to add a few of my thoughts in respect to corona, because that's a situation that we are in right now. That while this science is so advanced, is what I'm claiming, and I've demonstrated in various of my in many of my patients, and also demonstrated how it's an advanced version of mathematical biology. I try to understand the corona situation also through my Ayurvedic translational research lens. And what we found, when we all know that it's a very complicated disease. Why is it so complicated, friends? Is because uh, I analyzed the genomic sequences. What I figured out, that there were 30,000 base pairs, a little less than 30,000 actually, 28,280 base pairs are there. But the thing is, it is extremely mutative. 1,700 mutations occurred in the last 6 months based on the data that is available in the genomic databases. And we have today 60 mutant varieties. And some people present manifestations of two different mutations, mutant viruses, and then you have different manifestations of the disease. So this is how the cases were distributed. Look at this. It started off in November 2017. I mean, with about just one or two strains, and then today we have, November 2019. Today we have more than 1,700 mutations, various mutations, out of which 60 mutants are available. So that makes this one a little more complicated. And while vaccine, according to me, okay, this is my personal opinion, vaccine is almost impossible in the near future, because my logic is pretty simple. If there are mutations, the virus, the spike protein against which we are trying to against which we are trying to come up with some kind of chemical that will block the spike protein, is continuously changing. If its structure is continuously changing, it's very difficult for us to come up with a vaccine. But of course, there is a rush. People are working on it. I wish them all the best. But even otherwise, in the next 9 to 12 months, like, vaccine is not possible. Okay, I'm not saying this to scare you guys. We have a solution. That's what I'm there. We don't have to panic. I'll tell you why. But after this, brief introduction of how I understand corona. Um, so the problem here is, while it is extremely mutative, it is also extremely contagious. While it is extremely contagious, the mortality is not as high, actually. I'm comparing this with SARS-1, the H1N1, the avian bird flu, and the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, which occurred in 2012. The mortality in those diseases is very, very high, anywhere between 14% to 30%. Why? Take those examples. Even the flu, common cold, flu has a mortality of anywhere between 8 and 14% across the world in different countries. Here, the mortality is very less. It's about between 2 and 4, but it could pose a public health problem if because of because it is extremely contagious. It could transmit to many people at a time, and then 1 or 2% of many people would end up with many people requiring ventilator support, or emergency medical support, and then that makes this a public health problem. um, and of course, you guys have heard enough of it. I don't want to bombard with all that knowledge, but then I just mentioned that the spike protein, it binds with the cell membrane at this juncture, and to get into the cell, as you all know, and then the genome of the virus integrates with our genome, the human's genome, and then as and when our cells replicate, the virus also replicates, and then causes this disease. I'm sorry. So what is today known, that ivermectin, which had some promise in earlier forms of virals, it failed today. IL-6 inhibitor, there are certain treatment methodologies that are, the clinical trials are going across the world. And IL-6 inhibitor has partial success. The hydroxychloroquine, which was supposed to be actually working, later didn't show such promise. Remdesivir shows mixed results. Today, they're like, Gilead has come up with this remdesivir with about 30% improvement in clinical symptomatology after administration of remdesivir. There are certain Ayurvedic formulations like ginger helps some, and then there's a study going on in Delhi There were 74 patients. We don't know the protocol that was given, but then they improved, it seems, after about a week of administration of these Ayurvedic interventions. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of scope for interventions in a transdisciplinary approach. And because antiviral preparations and plasma therapy and vaccine could not be helpful at this stage. Why am I saying so confidently that plasma therapy might not work is because we just mentioned that the spike protein itself is mutating. I mean, the protein structure is changing, and hence the body actually, when we are encountered with a foreign body, the body produces an antibody. Antibody has a conformational structure. It's a complementary structure that binds the foreign body like this. If this structure keeps changing, the antibody cannot, it has to change continuously. So there are today 80 mutant strains, at least known. And 80 mutant strains would mean 80 different types of antibodies produced in the body. So which plasma would fit to which patient, we don't know as of yet. So plasma therapy might not work, but of course, nonetheless, it definitely merits the clinical trial. So so the only buzzword today is immune boosting. That's what is being said across the world. But what is immune boosting, friends? We just mentioned that the same immune system could react when there is excessive vata. The immune system could hyperreact. If there is excessive pitta in the immune system could have a spontaneous reactivity. And the immune system, if it has excessive kapha, it could lead to hyporeactivity. So type 1 and type 2 hypoxia states, I mean, type 1 and type 2 in this classification are caused by vata. Type 3 and type 4 are pitta manifestations, and type 5 and type 6 are kapha manifestations. Of course, it's not just a straightforward linear algorithm here. But then what I'm trying to say is, which type could be elicited in which individual is not anticipated unless and until you know the internal environment of an individual, which includes the vata, pitta, kapha proportions of individual organs. And because individual organs are again permeated by the immune system again. It's the immune system that is present literally in all of the 42 organs, and you have to correct the immune system in all the 42 organs, because the disease has not left any organ undamaged as of now, taking a cue from all the data that is generated by doctors across the world. So what is immune boosting finally? Immune boosting finally is balancing of vata, pitta, kapha. It is not just by taking one herbal supplement that you would get, you would say that your immune system is boosted. No. Vata, pitta, kapha, balancing of vata, pitta, kapha in each of the 7 tissues and 42 organs is immune boosting, and that has to be done very, very meticulously. So what I did was I analyzed the genomics of the virus from my Ayurvedic translational research lens, and I figured out certain aspects of this coronavirus, and I correlated them to the dosha effect that they could cause in the body. I'll show them in the next 2 slides. But then before that, what happens when there is a vata, pitta, kapha balance in the immune system is, we already know, we are already dealing with millions, trillions of bacteria that are actually living in the body. Actually, if you go scan the body, there are only 10 trillion cells in the in our body, actually 10 trillion human cells. 90 trillions are actually bacteria, out of which 20 trillion cells are 20 trillion cells are already infected by viruses. This is how we are living already. Why are we not getting affected by any of these bacteria? Is because the immune system, when it is in a state of VPK balance, the same bacteria which could otherwise cause disease in the body, they actually learn to cohabit with us. We also learn to cohabit with them. This is called a symbiosis, friends. And I'm talking about dangerous bacteria that are actually living in the body. There's something called beta streptococcus that actually could cause a rheumatic heart disease. A staphylococcus aureus, a dreadful cardiac disease that it could cause, are actually living in the body without harming us. In fact, not only without harming us, but also giving a lot of micronutrients that are actually acting as antioxidants. Like, for example, E. coli, Escherichia coli, is actually producing selenium 4+, which is not even found in the nature. And we get it free of cost with this bacteria. So that is why the ancient science of Ayurveda has mentioned about this. People come up with crazy thoughts. I'm sorry. Krimis are generously mentioned in Ayurveda, and how to deal with them is also mentioned in Ayurveda. There's a word called as krimi, and it is also described. And there are four types of chemicals that are used against these krimis. They call it the krimigna, krimi nashini, krimi rodhini, and kitamardhini. Krimi nashini is antibiotics. Krimi rodhini, antiseptic agents like the sanitizers that we are using today. Krimi Krimi Nashini, Krimi Rodhini, Krimi Ghna, like they cause asepsis. They kill all the bacteria across and outside of the body. And Krimi Ketamardhini are anti-worm infestations. Friends, even today in pharmacology, we only have these four classes of chemicals that deal with different bacteria and in different situations. So what I'm trying to say is that the body is performing a lot of non-immune functions. The immune system is functioning a lot of non-immune functions, not only helping the body prevent an attack by a foreign microbe, but also contain these microbes. And just like Modi ji, he takes advantage of any situation that is thrown on him. The body also has this infinite habit to actually take any and every opportunity of a bacterial infection, also turn it into a positive effect to the body. So what about the virus? What we know is that these viruses, initially it was said that the coronavirus is thermolabile. It dies at 77 degrees centigrade. But then when I analyzed the data, of the genomic sequences, what I figured out was that this virus is actually eliciting a vata pitta response, and because of which the pitta could, I predicted, I made a video on I put it on my channel. I predicted that this virus could actually sustain high heat as well. And then recently, just about 8 days ago, one of the French scientists demonstrated how this virus was able to sustain 60 degrees of heating for about 60 minutes. Usually we were taught in microbiology that if you heat water for about 60 minutes at a temperature of 60 degrees, all the bacteria, all the proteins get denatured. But it's not happening with this virus. So but again, it's not as dreadful as I mentioned, because there are various measures that could be taken to contain this. So these are the various symptoms, friends. You all know now by which times. I don't want you to panic. Why? Because see, we are already dealing with this bacteria, and see, the statistics of simple flu is very dreadful than even corona. So I'm not saying we have to be reckless. I'm just saying if we exercise a certain caution, we don't have to panic. Panic to the COVID-19 attack on us, because I just saw the survey that came out yesterday that 69% of urban populations are actually worried seriously about this disease. So I wanted to bring in that ability or that mental tendency to not panic, and then if you don't panic, your immune system automatically get boosted. So friends, now we all know who is at high risk. People who have had immune compromise or imbalanced vata pitta kapha are at high risk. And then as of today, physical distancing, socially connected but physically apart is the mantra that I would want to give. And then you all know how important it is for you to take these precautions of hygiene, asepsis and antisepsis. I'm not going to go in detail into this, because we already heard them so many times. And even after lockdown, I suppose we have to maintain these precautions, so that this situation is not going to get resolved immediately. I'm sure it's going to, because of its because it is highly contagious, we all are going to suffer from at one point or the other. But it's our choice. If we maintain physical distance, we are spreading the infection of, say, 10 crore people over a period of 18 to 24 months or even 30 months, as opposed to getting affected, all the 10 crores affected in the next 2 to 6 months. You know what I'm saying. This is going to cause a huge public health problem. If 1 to 2% require emergency medicine, we would not be able to tackle it. It was a public health problem. So what is known, as I just mentioned, friends, a detailed description of not just the krimis, but also different types of jwaras or the fevers are already explained in Ayurveda. It's only because we have not read these scriptures in original Sanskritam that we are actually thinking that our ancient scientists didn't know, and then people, I mean, some people have, I've heard them saying that viruses were discovered only in 1960. I'm sorry, they could be wrong, because these scriptures, ancient scriptures, give a detailed explanation of so many bacteria. They mentioned that Vimshati Lakshani bacteria are there. 2 million bacteria are present in the earth and on the earth. And then, that's what even the modern science says today, out of which 90,000 are viruses. So friends, if we need to come up with a vaccine for each of these viruses, you end up with only antibodies in the blood. That's going to be disastrous. I'm not against vaccines, but I'm saying that a certain method is there from our own scriptures, which could potentially offer that immunization, that could potentially protect us from this and possibly any other bacterial or viral invasion. And the way it is actually mentioned in the scriptures is, pandemic is characterized by a word called as Janapadodvamsa. This word was used, which causes pandemic when people suffer from across the world in different countries, at once. When they suffer, that situation is called as Janapadodvamsa, and it's pretty much similar to what we are dealing with right now. And then the Charaka Samhita and the Chikitsa Sthanam, chapter 3, mentions various types of fevers. I just listed some of these fevers: the Varsharutu fevers, the Prakriti fevers, the Antarviga, Bahirviga fevers, Sadhya, Asadhya jwaras, Vishajwara, Ativishajwaras, and the Santataka, Satataka, Anyajushka, Trituyaka, Chaturtaka jwaras, Ativisha, Dhatu. Dhatus are like tissues. Depending on the dhatus, there are Rasa jwara, Rakta jwara, Mamsa jwara, Meda jwara, Asti jwara, Majja, Shukra jwaras, and then the Dosha jwaras, friends. The Vata Pitta jwaras, Vata Kapha jwaras. There are several different mixed combination of these doshas that could lead to certain jwaras. And what based on my analysis of the genomics, that's going to be again a big topic, so I won't go into the details of how I analyzed all the 280 base pairs of this genome. But then what I figured out was this virus could actually be causing a Vata Pitta or a Pitta Vata jwara, and predominantly affecting the Rasa Dhatu. This corroborations or correlations were done because I did extensively. My area of research was translational research. I translated all these Vata Pitta Kaphas continuously in my experimental animal models and also experimental in vitro cell models. I continuously demonstrated how Vata translates into, say, amino acid synthesis or a protein synthesis. What kind of proteins could be formed in Vata under the influence of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and so on and so forth, and how glucose or galactose or various sugars get metabolized in Vata, Pitta, Kaphas. So based on that understanding, I characterized this jwara, this corona virus could be causing a Vata Pitta jwara and predominantly affecting the Rasa Dhatu. And and then why I'm saying is this, because there are several reports that I saw on the internet and coming from credible sources that it mentions that that they were actually trying to target the disease as a Vata Kapha disorder, because lungs are the seat of Kapha, is what Ayurveda mentions. True, I don't dispute with that, I don't deny that. But the problem is, they're actually not causing pneumonia. They don't even look like pneumonia patches. These patients who suffered from respiratory manifestations don't suffer from typical pneumonia-like lung disorder. It is a disorder that is because of hyperoxygenation of the lungs, because the virus is competitively binding with hemoglobin, not allowing the hemoglobin to bind with oxygen. Hemoglobin is a chemical present inside the red blood cell that binds with oxygen in the lungs and then carries oxygen to various tissues. Now there's a competitive binding, it's called as allosteric competition, offered by the virus particle to the hemoglobin. So oxygen is not binding to hemoglobin. That's why patients end up with respiratory syndrome, respiratory distress, and it is not because of pneumonia. That is why I characterize this. I put this, about the video on my channel about more than 8 weeks ago. I mentioned that it's a Vata Pitta or a Pitta Vata kind of a virus causing a Vata Pitta disorder in the blood. Again, Rasa Jwara is what I meant. Rasa and Rakta dhatus are predominantly affected, and based on again my analytics, I predicted that because there's a Vata Pitta. Vata Pitta kind of a virus, my assumption was that the Vata would require a specific receptor for its entry, and Pitta would require a different receptor for its entry. So I was scanning those complementary Pitta receptors in the body. I found that there are vanilloid receptors, but apart from ACE2 receptor is one that is already known, already published. And then what I predicted was that there's a vanilloid receptor based on genomic analysis. Genomic translational research analysis. I predicted that there could be a vanilloid receptor entry into the body, and also a transpeptidase receptor entry. And the second receptor is actually coming into a spotlight. There are investigations going on in genomic institutes across the world that the virus could have another point of entry into the body. So, I'm just saying how by understanding the doshas, you could actually predict what this virus is going to do into the body. And hence, once you know what kind of doshas the virus is going to influence or affect, if you're able to block that, you're actually providing an entry block, entry barrier to the virus, and then are immunizing yourself. So that is the reason why I went into analysis of the doshic analysis of the genomics as available. Genomic database is available of the COVID-19. So yeah, Prajna Parada Abhishapaja, I think it's going to be too long, so I'll skip that. So the preventive care is pretty much mentioned, friends. The Ayush website has mentioned about this. So I would definitely prescribe that. But there's a small change. The ginger tea is prescribed should be made with black pepper. And this is going to be anyhow available with you guys. So you can just refer to this. You add black pepper, turmeric, and ginger, and don't add lasuna. Lasuna is garlic, because garlic is a kapha haraka. It reduces kapha. In fact, for this virus, increasing kapha would be actually beneficial, because there's already vata and pitta aggravation in the virus. And hence, when you actually bring about a excessive kapha in the body, the virus could actually imbibe this kapha into its structure. And once the VPKs are balanced, the virus gets neutralized, or the body gets immunized enough, and then it is able to offer protection to ourselves. So there is a rationale behind prescribing this, the proportions in which you have to add the spices to milk, boil them, and then add honey to the milk, and have it 5 to 6 times. That's going to do a lot of good. I prescribed it to all of my patients, and then some of them were even were located in sensitive areas, but they were like, only that family didn't get affected, and everyone else were around them got affected. But then I'm not marketing anything, friends, but I'm only trying to say that this really helped many people. And then the ghritam, the ghee or sesame oil boiled in neem leaves, is another remedy that the Ayush Ministry has definitely mentioned this. The process of nasyam, just put 2 drops in each of the nostrils, put 2 drops, and then breathe in, and then put another 2 drops in the left nostril, breathe in, so that these 2 droplets offer a certain oil lining. Oil lining, I just mentioned, is a kapha layer. So when you have a kapha layer, the virus which has vata and pitta gets neutralized there, and offers this layer actually offers biochemical and or physiological and or physical barrier to the virus. So the same oil could be used for actually for oil pulling as well. For 10 minutes, just put this oil inside the mouth or ghee, and then make a swish. For about 10 minutes. Do this for oil pulling for about 10 minutes, and then spit that oil out, and then it offers again another layer of protection. This really helps. While the WHO says that keep yourself hydrated with warm water could be a myth, I still prescribe this because, as I mentioned again, it's a Vata Pitta kind of a fever. The Vata gets balanced with warm water, not hot water, warm water. Warm water's influence of Pitta is negligible. It doesn't affect Pitta, but hot water is going to aggravate Pitta. So we should not do anything that could aggravate Vata or aggravate Pitta, is the rationale behind. Drink plenty of sugarcane juice. That's going to do a lot of good, friends, because sugarcane has madhura vipaka, madhura rasa, madhura vipaka, which means it adds kapha to the body, and it gives those sugar, glucose molecules to the body that are required in both vata and pitta exacerbation syndromes. Okay, the above remedies could actually cause a lot of heat generation in the body, and hence, I prescribe a certain fennel tea that could be prepared and then had, if you feel generation of heat in the body. So there's a general remedy that I thought, would be helpful for people, with abdominal syndromes. I mean, to protect themselves from, to give in, to barricade the viral entry through the abdominal pathway. So guava leaves, 12 leaves in 1,000 ml of water, boil that for about 15 minutes until the water, 200 ml gets evaporated, becomes 800 ml. Take about 2 tablespoons, that about 30 ml 3 or 4 times daily. That really helps everyone. Differential nostril breathing is another important breathing technique that will help. Okay, anyone can do any technique that they are doing, but add this particular technique. And while while I say this, we all just heard. I just mentioned that yoga sama uchyate. The purpose of yoga is bring about a balance. It is not about how long you can hold your breath. No, that's not the trick here. If that were the trick here, Tom Cruise would have been the best pranayama yogi. He was under the water for 6 minutes in that movie. The purpose of yoga is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So for this, you need to bring about a sama. Yoga sama uchyate. And what is sama? Sama dosha. You have to do those exercises, those breathing exercises, or those yogic exercises, yogasanas, that bring about a VPK balance. And if you don't know what is the VPK proportion, which involves the Vata Pitta Kapha proportions in individual organs, we would not know what exercise is actually the right exercise. Actually, friends, you must have seen some people died on the treadmill. Some people died while performing yoga. One of the famous Vishweshwar Biradhari of Karnataka died while performing yoga of a heart attack. Why? Because not every exercise is required for every individual. Not every breathing technique or pranayama technique is essential for everyone. It depends on your VPK fingerprint. Because this virus is potentially causing a Vata Pitta aggravation, both of which increase the effect of the Surya Nadi. And hence, the technique that I am actually prescribing is breathe in from the left, hold your breath, and breathe out through the right. So breathing in, holding, and breathing out should be done in the same way. In only this fashion. Breathing from the left, hold your breath, then breathe out through the right nostril in a proportion of 1:4:2, which means if you're breathing in for 1 second, hold the breath for 4 seconds and breathe out for 2 seconds. Do this for about 10 minutes in the morning and in the evening. This really calms us and then, helps us boost our immune system as well. And there are certain asanas, naukasans, and Surya Namaskars in this order that I prescribe, and not for their, not because they will help us become flexible, but because the advantage with these exercises is that in any of the yogasanas is that we did these experiments. When much of the accentuation of yogasanas is on stretching the body. You all must have heard about it. So what happens when you stretch your body? The skeletal muscles get stretched. And when the skeletal muscles get stretched, we demonstrated this in experimental animals by stretching the legs of the heart. The muscles of the legs of the rats. we held it for about 40-45 seconds and then released it. What happened was the oxygen levels, we slowly started reducing the oxygen that was given to these animals, and then the rats were behaving normally, perfectly, even when the oxygen levels came down to 35%. Why is this important now? Is that this virus is actually binding to hemoglobin, so it is giving a competition to oxygen. So people are getting admitted in the hospitals, with low oxygen concentration. So when you do these stretch exercises, your stretch muscles trigger a certain response from the stretch receptors. The stretch receptors of the stretch skeletal muscles get activated, and when they get activated, they trigger a process called as ischemic preconditioning. And what it means is the body gets preconditioned or adapted to ischemia, which means to low oxygen levels in the blood. So in these experiments, we saw that the rats were performing perfectly well, even when we reduced the blood oxygen levels to 35%. And at 15%, they showed some signs of dyspnea, while in the real time COVID-19 affected individuals, the individuals are getting SOB, or shortness of breath, symptoms of shortness of breath, when the oxygen levels are going below 92, and at 80-85% of oxygen levels, people are dying. So this is going to really help us all, overcome the situation, if at all the virus penetrates the barriers and enters into the body. We still have these chances by simple yoga practices, which again have to be customized based on a Vata Pitta Kapha. And then, of course, in a severely debilitated individuals, we need to actually balance the Vata Pitta Kaphas of all of the Sapta Dhatus, or 7 tissues, and all the 42 organs. That should be done by a professional Ayurvedic or a allopathic physician. We're actually trying to present a clinical trial protocol. If everything goes well, we'll also participate in this clinical trial. There's remedies mentioned. I'll not go deep into these remedies again, friends. So what I'm supposing is that the PSA, or polyscientific Ayurvedic immunization therapy, might stand a chance, based on our experience of dealing with viral infections earlier. And friends, I completely believe that we have all that it takes us to make India the health capital of the world. Such vast amount of knowledge, just because we are not reading those original scriptures in the original Sanskritam, and deciphering from the original Sanskrit grammars. If had only we did this, we are sure that we'd make this this subcontinent into a health capital of the world. And COVID-19, I bet, friends, gives us that opportunity. And if everything goes well, I think we would really succeed COVID, and through which demonstrate the power of our ancient sciences. Because I truly believe, friends, that if only we build our India on the strength of our scriptures, that we become leaders of the world. If we follow just blindly America, we become followers of America. If you follow China, is great. Again, America, all the countries are great. But if you follow China, you become a follower of China. If you need to become a leader, not that there is a need, but because it's only Bharat that believes in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Every country or every other chain of thought is exclusivist. Only we are inclusionist. That's why we should spread our tentacles, friend, again with love, and on the strength of our love-powered scriptures, which are given by rishis. Once we do this, we can actually, show a lot of promise, not only improving health across the world. I made some numbers. These numbers, we'll talk them later. But then we came up with an entire IoT-based terminally healthcare model for India. And then this is we have. I'm in the beginning of my talk. I mentioned that we came up with digital technologies to automate healthcare delivery, and also do remote monitoring. We are like in the last phase. Actually, had it been not for Corona, we would have had this device and the applications in the markets. But then, nonetheless, COVID has opened up a different possibility, and we'd possibly, still come up with this in a very near future, and I'll keep you all posted, friends. So there's a lot of benefit if you do, I mean, if we do provide health, and there's a lot of promise by properly and scientifically translating this Ayurvedic knowledge into treatment of various diseases. We do this, we're going to save a lot of money for patients across diseases. Not only, save patients' lives and their money, but also through this plant-based treatment methodologies, we are going to power our farmers as well. We all know the situation of farmers, and we need to have a holistic understanding. This is like a creating a beautiful ecosystem, so that everyone is a stakeholder in in maintaining our health, friends. So I initially made this roadmap that we're going to become health capital. I mean, we're going to make India the health capital of the world in the next 10 years. But COVID has given us this opportunity, and I'm hopeful that we can save all those 9 years. And then if we're able to demonstrate efficacy of these polyscientific Ayurvedic remedies in tackling COVID-19, even in the emergency setup, which I'm very, very confident, because I had earlier tackled hepatitis B, fulminant hepatitis B, fulminant EBV. EBV is Epstein-Barr virus and other viral infections, who were actually left off by the allopathic physicians at a stage when the liver completely failed, and I was able to bring back such patients. But of course, friends, these are all anecdotal studies, but they definitely merit serious thought and serious translational clinical methodology. And if we do that, we'll really empower India and make it the health capital of the world. And we are on the way to become superpowers on the strength of our own sciences, friends. So we started off saying that, the problem is that we can cure only 15% of diseases. And then, I could completely, vouch for this, that the debate on sugar levels is actually closed. Why? Because we have figured out why the ACP, the American College of Physicians, the AGA, ADA, AACA have different parameters, because they have investigated different individuals with different Vata Pitta Kapha proportions, and hence had different HbA1cs in different individuals. This makes really sense, tremendous sense, and our own knowledge helps us understand disease in a appropriate manner, and then help people. We had helped many diabetic patients reverse their diabetes, many heart patients, as I demonstrated, reverse their heart disease. And the question of cholesterol is actually close to, we found different types of LDL, and bad cholesterol is not always bad, good cholesterol is not always good. Ati sarvatra varjiyat is what is said. If you bring about a VPK balance, you have perfect health in spite of very high levels of cholesterol, friends. And so I would say 85% of diseases can be cured, and maybe 15 may not be cured, because I did not do experiments on all of those 100 different varieties of disease, 100% varieties of diseases. But at this stage, I could definitely do mention, based on my 11,000 patient database, that 85% of diseases can be cured. Out of it, 70% can be cured at home, friends. So the Human Genome Project also has an answer through Ayurveda, because Ayurveda, when you bring about a VPK balance, what is happening is the DNA is getting repaired, friends. So the stem cell therapy doesn't make any sense. I mean, not that it shouldn't be tried. We should definitely go deep into that. But my 2 cents is that the stem cells injected from outside would immediately get remodeled under the influence of our own VPK imbalances in the body. Why am I saying that? Is this because all types of stem cells are present in all individuals at all times, in all tissues. Why are they not regenerating the organ is the question that we need to ask. This is scientific, friends. Why they are not regenerating is, under the influence of VPK imbalances, these stem cells become dormant. When you bring about a VPK balance, the stem cells that are present in the local tissues automatically get activated, and they repair and regenerate the tissues. And we demonstrated this through our experiments, friends. So, friends, India is the cradle of human civilization, and we are all lucky that we are endowed with amazing indigenous sciences by our rishis, who had all the power to win over any Raja, but they chose to live with nature in their loincloths, in those caves, and in with nature, because they loved nature. And Corona is also teaching us that, Mother Nature can cure herself if only we stopped exploiting her just for 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, Mother Nature healed herself, and this science is already given to us. And I completely believe that we become superpowers by applying these sciences to solve current problems of the world, and and then make India the health capital of the world and the Jagadguru of the world, as was always the case. Friends, thank you very much. I would love to take questions if you have any.
This is Rahul. I'm going to ask my first question before I get the others to ask questions. So,
Oh, sure, Mr. Rahul.
yesterday we had a lecture by Dr. Gobardhan Das, who heads the Center for Molecular Biology, I believe, at JNU.
Okay, wow, okay.
And
I'm sorry, I missed it. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about BCG and vaccinations that could be really super helpful. And unfortunately, today morning I also read that his proposal has been rejected. However, internationally he's getting a lot of recognition. So let's see where that goes. But long story short, I asked him a question. He talked about immune system as well, right? And
Right.
less hygiene factors in Indians, which leads to better immune system, something on those lines. So I've been struggling with this question. Does a new virus, can we actually have immunity for a new virus? Because modern science, medical science supposedly says that if it's a new virus, and one of the doctors on the talk said, no, this cannot be done because it's a new virus, so the body has no memory. Through memory, it cannot say what is the antibodies we need to generate to prevent it.
Right.
So can you
Very simple, friends. See, point number one is we already have this. Okay, when the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, these three doshas are in equal proportion in all of the 174 different types of immune cells. What happens is the bacteria that are entering from the body, I already mentioned that the body, it's not me who mentioned this. It's already mentioned by the microbiologists that we are composed of 90% of bacteria. All those bacteria were living in symbiosis with a mutually beneficial relationship. That's point number one. So we already have mastered this technique of working with everyone. This is sabka saath, sabka vikas, like Modi ji's principle.
But those are bacteria which are already there in the body.
That's what I'm coming to that. So what if a new bacteria or a new virus enters? A very right question. What happens is, okay, what happens when a virus falls on some surface on the ground, on the cartons or some non-living objects? The virus outside the body is just a chemical. That's all. It is not a living entity. When it enters, it is the way you react that the virus gains access to you. When you're in a state of VPK balanced, what happens is all that is not good for the body automatically eliminates. This is what the body is continuously doing with various chemicals. This is called as a non-immune function called as scavenging that is performed by the immune system. There are several non-immune functions, including your cholesterol. If it is in excess, what the monocyte or macrophage cell lines, which are forms of immune cells, they essentially take these cells, they cover them through a certain with the help of a certain layer in a process called as a phagocytosis or pinocytosis. And then if they're able to digest it, they'll digest it. We did this beautiful studies, friends. We are publishing them very soon. And then if they're indigestible, these monocyte macrophage cell lines, they break them down to as small as possible particles, and then scavenge them to liver or kidney, and then they eliminate the liver. In the liver, they further undergo certain reactions called as conjugation reactions. So the body, see, it's, if the receptor is allowing the virus, it's not the virus is penetrating through the receptor. The receptor is like a sense organ of the cell. Just like we have sense organs, the eyes, ears, and all these 5 sense organs that we have. The cell has sense organelles on the surface of the cell. On the surface of the cell is the brain of the cell that is thinking. The brain is reset based on the Vata Pitta Kapha imbalances. I mean, based on the dosha prabhava, the cells react. If there is no reaction, the virus again becomes just an ordinary particle. It's not always through an antibody mediated mechanism that stops the viral invasion in the body. It's again, there is a certain process called as a non-immune function of the immune system, which we unraveled in 2008. I'm writing a huge monograph on this very soon. We're going to come up with this with all data, not just not just by theories. We have a lot of data, and then we demonstrated how this non-immune functions will help this virus particle remain a particle in spite of the fact that it has entered into the body. Why, friends? So many viruses are there around us actually, but we are not getting affected by every virus. Why? Because not because of just immunity, not because of only because of antibody mediated immunity, but because of non-immune functions of immune cells as well. This is my answer, Rao. Thanks for asking. Two more examples. Say, for example, one from our scriptures, one in the real life. So from the scriptures, Jagadguru Adi Shankara, there was an instance when he drank a lot of mercury. It didn't affect him at all. And then there's a detailed explanation of why he had to drink mercury. But then, inspired by this, we did certain experiments. There are certain molecules. There's something called mercury formulations in Ayurveda, Makaradhvaja. We fed these Makaradhvaja. These are all, very poisonous mercury preparations. Not poisonous if they're properly processed, of course. So these mercury preparations we gave the rats. It's actually none of the mercury actually went into the rats at the end of the experiment. Entire mercury preparation, when it is processed in a certain way given by the rishis, they pass through the entire digestive tract, and at the end of it, the entire mercury came out. But what happened was the count of CD4 and CD8 got altered. The rats become more immunized. So this is what is the effect of certain ancient preparations that were already prescribed in Ayurveda in the form of Makaradhvaja. But these are because these are extremely they contain a lot of mercury. So proving why mercury is not harmful is again a big chapter. So we are not using them. But then by Ayurvedic immunization, what I mean is that these there's something called quantum observers effect, and I'm not saying exactly quantum observers effect is actually going to be in action in this particular instance. But then what happens is that when you don't react, how do you not react is by balancing with VPK. When you balance Vata Pitta Kapha, what happens is that the body takes in what is essential for it and ingests it, and what is not essential, it throws away. And it is happening even today, every day. The food that we have, why is that food, whatever amount of food you take, whatever meager amount of food you take, a part of the food will be eliminated in the form of stools, not because it's undigested, but because the body doesn't require this. This is a very lay explanation of what I wanted to explain. About the Vata Pitta Kapha balance and the benefits that it gives the body.
Yeah. So one is thing about VPK. So do you have any research paper which you can share so that we can understand VPKs better? So you told about the biochemical reactions which happens, right? So any research paper where we can
certainly I have published some research. Definitely there are 42 patents filed. The patents are going to be published very soon, but then you can look at the research papers, search for Dr. Ravi Shankar Polisetti, and then effects of diet. We have published how the Vata Pitta Kapha models were created in experimental animals, and this was published, and how the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha and their different proportions altered the animal behavior. Most of the papers some of these papers are published. The information that I shared is all from published papers. So you can just search on my name, please, and you'll find them. And then if you're not able to, we can provide those links.
Okay, so I think those will include the RMP, the resting
membrane potential. Yes, definitely, yeah.
Okay,
that's science. That's science of electrophysiology. We did those studies and how Vata, Pitta, Kapha altered the electrophysiology, and then how they led to altered cell signaling pathways. And this is very, very important actually, because I had to cut it down to be able to explain other aspects as well. But it's electrophysiology itself is a 55 hours lecture actually in my Polyscientific Ayurvedic course.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and other thing is about the vaccinations. So I know it's a very big topic,
Yes.
but still, so there are two kinds of things which are coming now. So some are anti-vaxxers and some are pro-vaxxers. So what is your opinion about this?
No, see, both are, whatever is scientific, I'll accept. There's nothing, there's no problem for me on that front. What I'm trying to say is there are various ways of immunization. Vaccines, for example, there's one way in which what you're saying is, if you say, for example, you know the structure of the cell phone, how do you block this cell phone? I mean, if it's a very micro, if the virus was like some billion times enlarged, billion to the power of billion times enlarged, it'll become this size. So you block this entry of this virus by creating a certain antibody, which actually fits it like this at the surface of the cell receptor and blocks the entry. This is one way. Another way is you don't do anything. That's what Vata Pitta Kapha does. When you bring about a VPK balancing, the body takes in, if the virus is useful for the body incorporates it into the genome. If it is not useful, it'll just not react. The virus automatically passes through and it won't even affect us. So that is how, part of herd immunity could be explained, possibly. I'm not saying this is how it should be explained, but we have to do more studies. But herd immunity possibly could be explained this way. And so the only problem with active immunization, this is passive immunization. What the problem with active immunization is, see, how many vaccines can you actually induce into the body? What is the kind of antibody load that the body will be able to accept? Isn't it? Antibodies are, they're very heavy particles. Immunoglobulins M, they're found in acute stage, but immunoglobulins G are at least 200,000 Daltons in size. How many of these immunoglobulins G and to how many viruses would you have to actually actively sensitize the body to produce those immunoglobulins? So that is going to be a nightmare for the body. It is going to, if you have too many antibodies in the blood, you could actually end up with certain coagulation disorders just because of so many proteins present in the body. So this is not possible. The only way, as Charaka Maharshi explains, and also Sharangadhara Maharshi in the Vaishajya Ratnavali, or and also Rasendra Sar Sangraman, other great texts, they mention that it is not possible to literally eliminate everything that is that you don't like. No, you have to coexist with everything, because we all know Ajayamano Bahuda Vijayate. The one unmanifested became so many. If you are able to see him in everything, then you're connected with everything. That is the purpose of yoga itself. So that and hence yoga samauchate, and the samatva leads to swasthya. And this is what is again Ayurveda saying. Swasthya is swasthanam shiryate iti swasthya. What it means is, when you go back to your original source, swasthanam is atmasthanam is swasthanam. That is the state when you're able to see him, unmanifested him in many manifestations across, then you have reached the swasthanam. That is swasthya. So that is why all these thoughts together, and also my a bit of translation research that I did has helped me understand that you have to coexist, and the body has this trick of coexisting with anything and everything, and also repairing the DNA when and if required, by bringing about a VPK balance. This is what I learned. Thank you very much for asking.
Thank you, Doctor. You are doing a very good job. I loved your thoughts for India and all that. Whatever you said, oh, it's great. I was just asking you, you are doing this public lecture on this, whatever you just said here. Are people aware of it? I mean, the politicians, the RSS people, the people who matter. Could we try this, whatever you just said, the treatment for COVID, right now in Maharashtra or Gujarat, the two states where they are Hindu-minded?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much for your kind words, Mr. Rathiji. Yes, see, I had started doing, I'd been doing scientific debates only until the beginning of last year. Since last year, I'd started talking to people, because, I'd reached out to literally all of the bureaucrats in the Indian bureaucratic structure, and also, but for Modi ji and Amit Shah ji, I think I met all of the ministers there. I mean, who are concerned
Mohanji Bhagwat, RSS
with
Nagpur.
health and Ayush and other ministries. Dr. Shripad Naik ji. I met everyone. I explained my concept. And they do understand the importance of this. But of course, this is a very anecdotal study that I have done. A lot of data has still yet to be generated. So last 14 years had been talking to the government of India with various bureaucrats. I have a lot of friends in the bureaucracy right now. And that's one point. That's one thing that I wanted to address. The second thing is in respect to COVID-19 situation, I sent a proposal to CCRS, a concept of my thoughts and how I analyze the genome, giving them the data, and then why I think the way I'm thinking, and what is the approach, not only for prevention, but also for ventilated patients. Because I believe, not just believe, I know Ayurveda works in literally any dire situation as well, any emergency situation as well. But the problem is in an emergency setup, people don't come to Ayurvedic doctors. That's the problem of lack of exposure or lack of building those institutions right after independence. So I'm not blaming anyone, but then, we have to know this, that we have not built those institutions, empowering those people, bringing this sacred and ancient knowledge into the mainstream. So in respect to COVID, I sent this proposal, the concept was accepted. So they've asked me to write a detailed proposal, so that I was busy. That's why otherwise I would have not missed yesterday's lecture. I was busy writing the clinical trial proposal. I think hopefully we'll submit it tonight or tomorrow early in the morning. And we have partnered with one of the hospitals in Gujarat, actually, because I told them that I'm willing to go to the forefront in the war, because this war has to be, people have to win. And this is a beautiful opportunity. I just mentioned, I made several lectures, several presentations also online, and also I put them on YouTube. I made an open video to Modi ji, also respectfully addressing him and then explaining him my position. And maybe all that, and also my friends in the Ayush ministry, in the task force of Ayush, and also in the health ministry have helped accept my concept initially. And then we are hopeful that, our clinical trial proposal also would be accepted. And once we do this, as I said, we could tackle this disease at any and every level. That's what I'm thinking at this stage. And then, once the results are out, they will speak of this way of Ayurvedic approach of dealing with COVID-19 or for that matter, any emergency situation. Thank you very much, Rati.
So, Nadi Pariksha, I have been going to Kotakal personally, Ayurveda Sala, and to some other Ayurveda acharyas, and they say that when you've eaten or even have water in the morning, Nadi Pariksha does not work. It needs very serious level of people who practiced for decades to be able to see, assess the Nadi of a person in a normal day. Otherwise, you have to see it. Is that true? And what is
absolutely? Yeah. See, there is something called immediate effect, and there's something called long-term effect. So the immediate effect of the dosha present in a chemical is seen immediately. That is the immediate effect. But for the dosha to get stabilized, it takes a certain time. That is what is mentioned in certain Ayurvedic nyayas, the principles called as the Kedara Kulya Nyaya, Kale Kapota Nyaya. What they mention is that, so when you have your food, the food first becomes digested in the intestines, and then there it becomes rasa. The rasa then becomes get converted into rakta. We all know this. We don't have to, you don't need a doctor explaining this. But the next part of digestion and how the nutrients are supplied to the body is the most interesting part. What happens is, the moment all the nutrients enter the rakta tissue or the blood predominantly supplies food to the muscle tissue first, skeletal muscle. Because the Ayurvedic chronology of Sapta Dhatus goes this way: Rasa, Rakta, Mamsa, Meda, Asti, Majja, and Shukra. So, if only the skeletal muscle is satisfied with the nutrients and the doshas, that it allows the Meda Dhatu to get satiated with the nutrients in the blood. So the way the nutrients are supplied to individual tissues is, follows a certain chronology. This work we did back in Moscow. So why is it important here is, just like you mentioned, that the doshas immediately show up in the food. But then what I do when, in the nadi. So what I do is I ask patients to come to me early in the morning before having their breakfast, or at least 6 hours after they have their food. By the time I do the Nadi Pariksha. As I mentioned, see, one thing that is missing in today's Nadi Pariksha, which is actually mentioned in Vaisheshya Ratnavali, Yoga Ratnakaram, and Sharangadhara Samhita, all these books, and also Madhava Nidanam to some extent, they mention how Nadi Pariksha has to be done, how you can get the Vata Pitta Kapha proportions of individual organs by applying differential pressures at 7 different levels with 3 different fingers. You end up with 21 pressure points on one hand and 21 on the second hand. So you have to do the Nadi Pariksha on both the hands. And these 42 pressure points refer to or give you information about the Vata Pitta Kapha proportions of 42 organs. That is how I diagnose imbalances in each of these organs. And again, you have to know the Nyayas and the Sutra Sthanam perfectly so that you know the interrelations of these VPK imbalances in different organs. Because you need to know, say, the Vata Pitta Kapha imbalance of the heart, how it could affect the Vata Pitta Kapha of the brain. Which came first and which was next is another big problem in Ayurveda. That is why you have to apply a lot of data science. And luckily, I come from an allopathic background, and some of these algorithms are already taught in allopathy. So it became very easy for me to actually correlate them at a biochemical and a physiological level in the beginning. And then later, this basic understanding helped me understand the dhatus, the doshas in a very advanced level. It is as I mentioned, is an advanced form of mathematical biology. So you have to keep this in mind and all the nyayas in mind, and also the sutrasthan, the fundamentals of the way the panchabhutas interact with each other. The Prithvi, Apa, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha, they have a certain way in which they interact with each other. So that has to be understood. And then the Vata Pitta Kapha, which are derivatives of these Pancha Mahabhutas, why did they come in the first place? Why did these Panchabhutas get manifested in the form of doshas in the first place has to be understood. And then the interactions between the Vata Pitta Kaphas themselves have to be understood. Interactions between the dhatus amongst themselves and the doshas in the relation with the dhatus in different dhatus has to be understood. And all this has to be understood holistically. Then only will Nadi Pariksha make really sense. That's what I do all my life. I did that, and it really helped me. As you rightly pointed out, yes, empty stomach, you have to see the empty stomach, and ideally Charaka Samhita, even the Bhagbhata's Ashtanga Hridaya mentioned that it has to be seen early in the morning. But I trained myself to see the Nadi in different times of the day, given only one condition, that the patient should be fasting for about 6 hours before I do the Nadi Pariksha. It's a very advanced science. So what I did was all this the components of Nadi Pariksha, we translated them. We created, I just mentioned that we created models of Vata Pitta Kapha. We not only created models of Vata Pitta Kapha, but also models of different subdoshas of Vata Pitta Kapha. Like Vata, the 5 types of Vatas I just mentioned: Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. Then there are 5 types of Pittas: Sadhaka, Alochaka, Ranjaka, Bhrajaka, Sadhaka Pittas, Alochaka, Sadhaka, Ranjaka, Bhrajaka, and one more Pitta. 5 types of Pittas. We created models of these 5 types of Pittas in different organs, in different animals, and then correlated them to whatever is correlatable with the data that, and started generating data in the language of modern science. And that helped me connect these dots in allopathy, those dots that were missing in allopathy. That's why I don't go by your broad blood lipid levels. No, I don't go by them. I look at the lipid levels. Lipids are the cholesterol levels. I still look at the dhatus and then see if a certain level of LDL, a certain biochemical number of LDL or low density lipoprotein is good in a certain individual or not. Sometimes, in my own example, I had very high levels of cholesterol for more than 17 years. And because I did my Nadi Pariksha, I said all the Vata, Pitta, Kaphas in all of the Saptadhatus were balanced. So I said that is my normal. I mean, if you listen to this number, you'll be astonished. My numbers were around at least not less than 700 cholesterol. That's 3.5 times higher than the normal limit that is set by. So not always. I mean, I'm not saying this is the norm for everyone. So don't go by this, please. But this makes tremendous sense. Without the context of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, numbers don't make any meaning. I mean, at least for me.
Sure. Are you allowed to practice like this in the US, or how? Or
you know what? Luckily, I always thought it's a very, very good question. So I went to Russia. I practiced this there, and I always sought a partner from the government. And luckily, my first partner was the wife of Russian speaker. So we set up a hospital. The first multi-specialty Ayurvedic hospital was set up by us in 2003 in Moscow, right in the heart of Moscow. Okay, Ayurveda was practiced earlier too. But then, they were all practicing in some kiosks in those territories that were like unexplored. But we were right in the heart of Moscow. And I did this across the world. And in Canada, I got certified as a naturopathic doctor. And I'm a DNM there, Doctor of Natural Medicine. And I'm also a doctorate in humanistic sciences, DHS. So in Canada and America, I practiced this way. So we didn't have any problems. I always believed, Rahul Bhai, ki if you do good, bad will not come to you. That's for, and it was proved in the last 18 years.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.